So they're choosing to call out in the title of this paper the smallest effect, which favors the unprocessed food diet. If you just choose to call out the lean mass difference, which with Ozempic and all the talk nowadays about losing lean mass and how bad it is to lose lean mass and how important lean mass is to keep. Well, you could easily say an unprocessed diet causes you to lose 1.3 pounds of lean mass.
Bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barbin. With me is Brad Pilon. And today we're going to review a paper that is trying to compare ultra-processed, whatever an ultra-processed food is, to an unprocessed food diet. Whatever that is. And try to explain what happens metabolically between the two. And I think this is going to be instructive because when you get into it, it's hard to tell. I mean, we don't even have a good classification system for processed and unprocessed anyways. So they're using a particular scale called the NOVA classification system. We'll get into that in a different podcast. But I want to talk about what I view as the dishonesty of reporting this, and the headline of this paper. The title of this paper. Yeah, headline, because it sounds like a.
It does sound like that's what I asked you. You told it to me. I'm
right,
like, yeah,
totally.
Is that a headline? Yeah.
Right. So the title of the paper is Ultra-Processed Diets Cause Excess Calorie Intake and Weight Gain. An inpatient randomized controlled trial of ad libitum food intake. So
from that, it's an ultra-processed diet, not ultra-processed foods, which is interesting. And then ad libitum means they could eat as much as they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then cause weight gain. Okay, so eating as much ultra-processed foods as you want causes weight gain relative to what?
Well, relative to the non-processed diet.
Okay.
Now, it's a crossover trial, so I don't even think it's a crossover. What happens is people eat the ultra-processed diet and then the unprocessed diet, and then another group of people do it in the other order as to remove any effect that it could have. Well, if everyone ate the unprocessed diet first, then the ultra-processed, maybe that has an effect. So you have two groups going in reverse order, so you could get rid of that effect. That's actually a smart design.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
But that title just tells you ultra-processed diets cause excess calorie intake and weight gain. That's it. Like, they're telling you that right at the start. So when we're going to review this paper, really not very briefly, we're going to show you that how much to put the title weight gain. How much weight do you think they'd had to have gained
relative to the other group? It has to be, for me, at least 3 to 4 pounds at the very least difference, right? Because otherwise you're just looking at spurious changes. You're looking at 2 or 3 people in the trial who gained 7 pounds because during the trial period, they went away to a family barbecue, and that skews all the data. And you just have the variance of any sort of measurement. So you've got to be at least 3 to 4 pounds, and people tend to miss on this, right? If anything less than that, it's like, how many subjects are we talking?
20 total.
Oh, so 10 in each group?
10 women.
I want 5 pounds.
10 men. Now, it's a 28-day trial where they're in a lab, so they're in a metabolic ward, so they can't.
They're in a ward for the full 28?
They're in a ward, yes.
Okay.
So there's a lot of control you can have there. Now, they exercise regularly, and they're presented. Okay, so let's get it. So let's get to the results. Let's get to the results, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
So the ultra-processed food category gained 1.98 pounds.
So less than a kilo, less than 2 pounds.
Yeah.
Do you know the starting weight of these people?
It's not super clear in the research. I wasn't looking at their BMIs their BMIs were in the 27 average range.
Okay.
So that's
men and women.
Men and women. So that's average. That's overweight, right? So anyway, so they're not super thin or anything, but they're not super huge. They're not like in the 35 BMI range or anything like that. So
I'm guessing they gained 1% of their body weight then. like a 1% increase.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Right.
Yeah,
What were they
right.
starting? Yeah, right. And so now the
Jeez.
so the ultra processed food people gain 2 pounds
Okay.
to body weight. Like I
Yeah.
can go up and down 3 or 4 pounds in a day easy.
I could do a
So-
drinking of water while we podcast. Like it's
Right.
yeah.
So we're going to call, so that's it. They're calling 2 pounds. Yeah, that's it. They're calling 2 pounds the result. Now that
Can I jump in and ask how they measured that, DEXA?
DEXA.
So still 2
Mhm.
pounds is within the range of DEXA
Well,
error.
DEXA's
Or not
DEXA's
error, but
error,
variability.
1 to 2% variability on a DEXA.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's already okay. So what you're claiming is weight gain could just be within the error range of the measurement
Can I
device
just-
you're using.
So they got to eat ultra processed bad food for 28 days straight for every single meal, and they gain 2 pounds.
Well,
I'll
no,
do
not
that.
28. No, sorry, not 28
Oh.
days. The ultra processed and unprocessed diets for 14 days each. So 28
basically
days.
a 2-week bender
weeks.
because they're allowed to eat whatever they want,
Yeah.
and then realistically they could fast for a day and lose 2 pounds at the end of it. But,
Yeah.
okay. Anyway, go on. Now,
So-
how about
but hang on.
the super healthy guys? How'd they do?
They lost 1.98 pounds, so 2 pounds.
And there's your weight difference. Yeah.
There's your weight difference. Well, but they say ultra processed diets cause excess calorie and weight gain. They don't say anything about a difference between the unprocessed diet. You know, they don't talk about the relative difference. They just say one went up. They don't even say what happened to the other
They
one.
didn't say relative to it. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
not in the title, right? The title
Yeah.
is to this person clearly wants to attack ultra processed foods, and we'll get in, and then you'll see why in the data here. So the unprocessed lost 2 pounds. So you can say, wow, in 14 days, that's a 4-pound swing. That's great. But when you dig into what kind of weight they gained and lost, story starts to change.
Okay.
So the ultra processed food gained 2 pounds of body weight,
Yep.
but of that, 1.1 pounds was lean mass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And only 0.88 was fat.
So less
Now-
than a pound of fat.
Less than a pound of fat. So now you're
Okay.
really getting into, like, is that just the error of the measurement device? So I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done multiple DEXAs. I talk about it. I did a DEXA, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I brought in like a 2-liter thing of water
Right.
and just did a scan, drank the water, did another scan 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
As you would expect, the lean mass portion of my measurement went up because the water should be counted as lean mass, but my fat mass totally changed by almost 0.7 pounds, which shouldn't happen at all. So how could my
the fat
total
mass changed too.
how
yeah.
could my total body fat mass change from drinking water?
I had my
It
lean
doesn't-
mass go up by a pound by eating some Twizzlers. in
Right.
between
Right.
tests.
We've done this. Me and Brad both done this
Yeah.
where we've tried just to see what happens if you eat something and just do another scan right away. So
Yeah.
the point is making the claim right in your headline that it causes you to gain weight,
Yeah.
but the fat gain is only 0.88 pounds. And we've both done little experiments using a DEXA, which is what they use here. And we can prove just the state of your hydration 5 minutes later can change it by up to 0.7 pounds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're slicing this so finely here. If this was a 10-pound difference, I'd be like, okay, you got something here.
The trial
but-
has to be longer than 14 days. Yeah. So that's the problem
Yeah.
is by limiting it to 14 days in each diet, you've limited the magnitude of the effect. So
Right. And so
yeah.
so obviously people who want to believe this are going to make the assumption that, oh, you just keep going, it's going to be another pound and another pound and another pound. But
Yeah.
I would argue this is just within a daily normal fluctuation anyways. And these numbers are also within the error range of the DEXA anyways. So this is slicing it really finely here. And
What was the fat and lean on the super healthy unprocessed people?
right. And this is also instructive. The unprocessed people lost 2 pounds, and you're thinking 2 pounds in 2 weeks. That's not bad. I'll take
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But only 0.66 was fat, if we're going to even count the measurement as accurate, and 1.3 pounds was lean.
So if we're counting the lean gain in the one group, we have to count the lean loss in the other group as matter of fact. This is just what it is. So if you don't want to count any of that as variability, then what's my
So
my
what's the
title
point
of
of
my
this?
paper? Super healthy unprocessed foods cause lean mass loss. Like it's
Well, you could make an equal claim that unprocessed healthy food causes you to lose 1.3 pounds of lean mass. It's
in 14
actually
days. Yeah.
in 14
That's
days.
the biggest loss, right? Of all the numbers you've just given me, that's the highest number.
It's the biggest change. Well, actually, the
Yeah.
lean mass on both parties, on both sides, is the biggest change. The fat change is the lower amount
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
both sides. So they're choosing to call out in the title of this paper the smallest effect, which favors
Mm.
the unprocessed food diet. If you just choose to call out the lean mass difference, which with Ozempic and all the talk nowadays about losing lean mass and how bad it is to lose lean mass and how important lean mass is to keep. Well, you could easily say an unprocessed diet causes you to lose 1.3 pounds of lean mass. And
did they do a macro breakdown of the two diets?
I didn't even bother. It's this the paper's 45 pages long, and it outlines every single thing they ate with pictures and all this stuff. And I just wanted to hit the highlight. We could spend hours on this thing. I just wanted to hit the highlight of how disingenuous I think this title is, given you could have easily rephrased it to ultra processed diet causes lean mass gain and unprocessed food causes lean mass loss.
Okay, so how about this?
And those magnitudes are bigger than the fat gain or loss.
I'm guessing from the title that the people in the processed food group ate a bit more measured by calories. Would that be true?
The unprocessed food, they ate just less total calories.
Okay.
And the ultra processed food, they said it led them to eat more. They just ate more.
So you could also have the title of eating slightly more food caused lean mass gain?
There's so many different things you could say. There's so many. Given how small this magnitude of an effect was, and the fact that they chose to focus on the smallest effect because it favors the narrative that ultra processed foods are like bad for you, you could have said so many things with equal support out of this data, right? So
yeah,
it's just disingenuous. It's just totally disingenuous
even
to frame it that way.
We take the view that yes, ultra processed foods are bad for you. We're not going to question that. Of the ways I would have to explain it's bad for you, saying that it might cause you to gain less than a pound of fat in 2 weeks if you eat only it for every meal for 14 days, I think would be not that impressive to the average person. If I was sitting at Starbucks telling someone they shouldn't eat processed food because, hey, if you ate only that for every single meal for 14 days, you'd gain less than a pound of fat. I don't think that's my major selling point. So did they have something else? Health data?
Yes. Then now let's get into the health data, because I'm sure whoever's listening that wants to believe ultra processed food's terrible for you, they're like, oh, what happened to their insulin resistance? What happened to all that other stuff?
Yeah.
So
that's the main one, right?
Right. And all of that other stuff is actually in here.
Okay.
So
good.
And now they're talking about the metabolizable. And another thing they didn't even control for was how much soluble fibers in both diets. So the ultra processed food diet seems to have more metabolizable energy anyways, just because of its composition.
So the calories weren't controlled because they could eat whatever they want, but it looks like the macros weren't overly controlled either if there's a massive difference in fiber then.
Well, what happened is the ultra processed food group just ate more carbs. Well, actually, no, sorry. They ate more carbs and more fat. Interestingly, the same amount of protein in both groups. So when not instructed what to do, people sort of normalized into the same amount of protein, which was like they don't really
70 to 90 grams a day. And
they don't really have an explanation for why that happened, but it was quite tightly conserved in both groups. So the ultra processed
protein stat theory in practice. But...
there's a theory about why that happens, but in general, without being told what to do, they more or less ate the same amount of protein.
Is there any measure of? I guess you could just do it on one of those 10 millimeter scales, and you check where more or less you kind of feel like, just in terms of tastiness of the food. Like I wonder if the processed food was just yummier.
So here we go. This is the subjectivity of this type of research. They do point out here that the appetitive measurements, participants did not report significant differences in the pleasantness of the meals, just the palatability, all that stuff they try to say. And this is just some sort of subjective scale. They tried to say that nobody found the ultra processed meal more palatable or more pleasant or any different than the which I just don't believe that for a second. Like it must taste somewhat better.
I bet you it depends on when you take that measurement, right? After day 8 of nothing but processed food, it starts to taste. It's like when you're on a road trip with the guys. It's like I just want a salad. Like guys, this is brutal. You just
Yeah.
get so sick of it. So I think it would depend on the way you made the measurement.
Right. You can eat your way. You can eat your way in and out of
Food tasting good.
sensing the need and want to eat a certain kind of food.
Yeah.
I would find it highly suspicious that the ultra processed food just didn't taste better. It wasn't more palatable. Nothing about it was more
Okay.
nothing about it was more palatable. More, I mean, obviously, I'm not doubting that they ate more, probably because it just tasted better.
Well, but here's my thought for you. Okay, it'd be very difficult to blind those subjects to who's eating a salad versus who's eating a Twinkie. And obviously, it wasn't that big of a difference, right? But it was still different. So if they are humans eating highly processed foods, knowing they're eating highly processed foods, do you feel badly about doing that? Are you trying like that inherent bias? Just like we're suggesting that maybe there's some bias by the researchers. There must be some bias in the subjects. You're not from Earth, right? So you would know.
Again, they're it's a crossover, so they act as their own. They do both.
Yeah.
So they know when they're eating one versus the other, which I don't know.
It's weird.
I just don't see. I don't see how the ultra processed food's not more palatable, and you just kind of want to eat more. I mean, we know this. We know that the better the food tastes, it's kind of moreish. It's especially if it's in this category where it's a little higher in sugar,
dry, a
little higher in sugar, fat, and salt. It's reasonable that you want to eat more of it. It's like it's moreish. It's fine.
Yeah.
But again, they just tried to say, oh, it's all they viewed it completely as similar. There was nothing more palatable, nothing better about it.
So it caused them to eat more, but it wasn't any more palatable.
Right. So they're trying to paint the picture that it's all happening like subconsciously at the brain level or at the biochemical level, and
I wonder how
you're utterly unaware. Like the idea that you reported that, no, I don't know, I must have ate about the same.
But I wonder how you would control then for calorie density and volume, right? You know that most sort of natural foods are about 3 calories per gram and under. So your eggs, your milk, your meat, your fruits, your vegetables, all those things are on that range. And then your peanut butters, your chocolates, are all like 5, even 6 calories per gram. So I wonder if the volumes, we'll have to look in the paper, but if they controlled for the actual volume of each meal.
I don't think that matters because you could eat ad lib.
Yeah,
you could just because there was meals presented. They say the meals were presented as if they were should have been the same amount of calories. And then it was your choice to continue eating more, eat more snacks if you want, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And it turns out this is so drilled down for such a small effect. There were so many things being measured.
And am I just so that I've got this clear in my head? Am I correct in saying the ultra processed people ate only ultra processed? So it wasn't like they had lunch of a sandwich, etc., and then were given a Snickers afterwards. They were just ultra processed the whole way through.
No, it's an ultra processed diet. It's built that like it's choosing from the ultra processed category. The thing is, these categories are so, and we'll get into this in another pod, they're so wide ranging as to what fits in ultra processed versus not. You can choose, regardless of what they chose here, you can choose to make an ultra processed and unprocessed meal look kind of similar. Like not obviously bang on the same, but you can get them. You can get them wildly far apart, where all you're having is like a salad with some lean chicken on it versus like Oreo cookies. So you can go super widely apart like that. Or they can converge. Yeah, they can converge where both diets have some oatmeal in it, and then both diets have some bread, and then both diets have maybe a fatty cut of meat, and then both diets have some yogurt. And you're like, well, wait, is that some of those are ultra processed, but some of those aren't, and like cheeses. So you can the lines get blurry fast when you try to decide what process.
So and this is the hard part here then, and I know we're going a bit off a tangent, but we're talking about the inherent bias possibly that the researchers had, but at the same time, my inherent bias, as you're telling me about this, as I'm trying to picture, just like every other reader would have who read in that article, what that processed diet looks like. Right. So I'm immediately thinking, well, Twinkies and Snickers bars and all that kind of stuff. And you're saying it's not, it's more complex than that. But since the average person doesn't think of it as more complex than that, it's like, it's just biases running into biases, right? Like
Right. And I mean, to their credit, they're trying to control the two diets as closely as they can. It's just it's partly an exercise in futility. So, anyways, let's get into like the quote unquote health markers, because people might be thinking, oh, well, they had to have something went wrong.
Had to go.
Insulin resistance, all that stuff.
Cholesterol.
So, good one to point out. So, oral glucose tolerance tests performed at the end of each diet period indicated no significant difference in glucose tolerance. Therefore, insulin.
So they did an OGTT. So they took 75 grams, 100 grams of glucose in a drink, drank it. You measured the glucose spike between the two. And after 14 days of the ultra processed diet, it was the same as the unprocessed and the same as the beginning of the trial.
Right.
All right. Okay.
So there's no significant difference in glucose tolerance tests. Therefore, insulin sensitivity as measured by the Matsuda index was not significantly different between the ultra processed and unprocessed diets.
Okay.
Furthermore, there was no difference in the average daily glucose concentrations or glycemic variability between the diets measured by a constant glucose monitor.
Oh, wow.
So it had no effect on insulin sensitivity, no effect on basically just your standard
daily
blood glucose levels.
24-hour blood glucose. Okay.
That's
really weird, but okay.
Right. So
it's not weird. There's my bias again, right? Like
all of these numbers are in kind of standard range. Like a couple things changed, but HbA1c was the same. Glucose was statistically, non-glucose. Again, we just said non-significant. Insulin non-significant.
HOMA-IR? Did they do
HOMA-IR? No, non-significant.
So these are measures of your insulin resistance over time. So not just acute insulin measurements, but now we have chronic insulin and blood glucose. We have short term with doing the OGTT. Okay. So really we could say that blood sugar metabolism remained the same in that 14-day period for both groups.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And you could literally cherry pick any number you want here that changed. I mean, they barely changed. For example, HDL cholesterol went from a baseline of 58. This is your good cholesterol. It went from a baseline of 58. So you want this higher. It went from 58 to 55 in ultra processed, which is insignificant, but it dropped all the way to 48 in the unprocessed diet. That's a long way down.
It went from 58 to 48 in 14 days on the
unprocessed
on the good
food.
diet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could argue.
Did they explain that, or go into detail, or
no?
Mark it as significant?
They're not calling out anything. They're not This is in the chart, right?
Yeah.
They're not calling anything out in the discussion that's unfavorable to the unprocessed diet.
Wow.
Now they'll call out other parts of the chart that are favorable to it, but not the unfavorable parts. Uric acid actually went down in the ultra processed diet, but stayed the same in the unprocessed, which you kind of might think that might not go that way. And in a lot of cases, the baseline to the ultra processed either held, so it's just the same, or which they say might be indicative that everyone was eating an ultra processed diet before this study anyways, because they kind of just nothing. In many cases, the number from pre to post for the ultra processed intervention was the same. So for example, insulin went from 11.9 to 11.3 for the ultra processed diet, baseline to end of diet. So it's just the same. But it went to 8.9 for the unprocessed, but again, statistically not significant. But any of these numbers that look about the same start to the end of ultra processed diet, they suggest, well, that means they were all eating ultra processed diet the whole time anyways, like before they ever joined the trial in the first place. Just assuming North American people are just doing that, right? It's not like everyone showed up to this study already eating an unprocessed diet. They're assuming.
Right.
So if they got little movements here in a positive direction on certain things on the unprocessed diet, part of their answer is just, well, all these people were probably eating an ultra processed diet beforehand. Like that's
okay. Yeah.
Like in the wild before this study ever happened, that must be how they were eating.
Yeah.
So, but so there's more numbers here. We're not going to get into them all, but the big ones don't change. Insulin sensitivity stayed. Glucose and insulin were similar.
Cholesterol.
Well, cholesterol actually went the wrong way. At least HDL went if you're going to consider 58 to 48, which I think it's kind of a relatively big movement in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you have that going the quote wrong direction.
I guess if that's not significant in 2 weeks, then similar movements and anything else aren't significant either, is a way to think of it, I guess.
Well, okay, so for you have HDL going the wrong direction with the unprocessed diet,
Right.
and then you have LDL going kind of the right direction, but much smaller magnitude. So their LDL, the bad cholesterol, starts off at 82 baseline.
Okay.
Then it goes to 84 on the ultra processed diet, which is statistically not significant because we're talking about a plus minus of 3. So that's, you can call that the same. Then on the unprocessed diet, it goes from 82 baseline to 77. So it's kind of a move,
but not again, as big as the move on HDL. So yeah, okay.
If you look up what the measurement error is on those tests, it's all the same. Okay. Like it's like 82 to 77 or to 90. All of that's kind of the same. If it goes from 82 to 150, yeah, you had to move, like something.
Yeah.
Moved.
Okay.
But that's not significant. So LDL kind of doesn't really do anything. I'd argue HDL did make a significant move in the wrong direction. Total cholesterol kind of went down, but we know that sort of doesn't matter because it's these these fractions within it are the things that matter. And triglycerides, here's a really interesting one. This is the last one that you'd really think is like, okay, I got him on that one.
Yeah.
Baseline triglycerides were 72, which is good. These people's cholesterol is good. Like I'm jealous because mine's just never this good.
Yeah.
So baseline cholesterol 70. First of all of their numbers are good. These aren't bad numbers. 82 baseline. These are very healthy people.
Yeah. Students maybe.
No, I think they're older than that. So triglycerides went from 72 down to 62 on the ultra processed food diet. So triglycerides improved. Okay.
60,
which
60 is low.
72 is low. 62 is great.
Yeah.
And then on the unprocessed diet to 59. So you'd call that essentially the same movement.
Yeah. But so what, you got to eat more. Yeah. Okay.
Well, so now we've just seen on a whole, cholesterol actually improved. Nothing happened to insulin sensitivity. Nothing happened to glucose. And then like C-reactive protein, some of your inflammatory markers, nothing happened. They're just
that was the big one. I would expect based on my bias, a diet of massively processed foods, you'd see sort of a systemic whole body inflammation.
So C-reactive protein, high sensitive C-reactive protein went from 2.7 down to 2.4 for the ultra processed diet, and then down to 1.5 for the unprocessed. So in both cases,
so it got better in both.
I would say you'd stay the same.
See, the hard part there is you're in a met lab, and to your point, you're not in the wild. So you could argue that they all ate an No, I was about to say you could argue now they're eating less, but they gained weight. Well, they didn't really, but they didn't lose weight. So I have no clue.
Again, no matter where you look here, there's no real problem with the ultra processed diet. If anything, he's proved that you should go ahead and eat an ultra processed diet.
At least for 14 days, you can go away for 2 weeks and be fine. So, is this an underpowered study in that there wasn't enough subjects? Is the study that didn't go long enough? Or is it a study that if we reproduce it 10 times, you get 10 different results? And that's what we don't know.
So we're kind of getting to the end here. So what are the takeaways? First of all, I think it's dishonest the way the headline is. Ultra-processed diets cause excess calorie intake and weight gain. You could have rewritten that ultra-processed diets have a favorable effect on cholesterol. That actually could be just as accurate of a headline as what we got.
Unprocessed diets have a negative effect on lean mass.
Unprocessed diets cause you to lose lean mass. You could say that too. So again, part of the takeaway message here is there's this ongoing narrative that ultra-processed diets are evil for you. And the interesting thing is one of the narratives of that is that it messes up your metabolic hormonal system, and that's what leads you to all the but then we saw here insulin didn't change, glucose didn't change, like all of those things didn't change. So
we would have to data mine down to like thyroid, testosterone, like other markers, and just find something.
That's thyroid, and that stuff was in there, but nothing of significance changed besides the fact that in the ultra processed food diet, which I still maintain must have tasted a little bit better, so they ate a little bit more. And then, so within the error range of a DEXA, it suggests you gained a little bit more fat, but you also gained lean mass. So I bet you your body composition didn't even change. So whatever your fat percentage was, it's not really listed here. But if you gain more lean mass than fat mass, your body composition is not really going to change. So if you were 25% fat, you're still 25% fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the other group losing 1.3 pounds of lean mass and 0.66 pounds of fat. But you could actually argue the unprocessed food people's composition changed worse.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they lost more proportionate lean mass than fat mass.
My bias would be to say this study proved that it takes longer than 14 days for a diet of high ultra processed foods to have an effect. But then that's kind of a pointless. I couldn't make a full article out of that. That'd be difficult to do.
Right.
So I don't know what we've got there. We've just got it's just bad because it is. Right?
It's a study published, which I think is irresponsible that it even got published with at least that title.
Yeah.
Because the takeaway from this is that some journalist is going to write about it. They're not going to read the study. They're not going to get into all of those specifics. They're definitely not going to look into the total amount of weight gained or lost, and especially break it down to how much it was lean fat or lean mass fat or lean mass on either side. And they're just going to take the diet for, of course, ultra processed food makes you gain weight.
You know who this is a huge win for? Do you remember the mid 2000 if it fits your macros, whatever and they were just like, eat whatever you want. Just at the end of the day, your spreadsheet for protein, carbs, fats, calories needs to be at this number. And it was like, they were sort of one of the original sort of bad boys in nutrition, that whole sort of movement. This is a great paper for them, right? It's just so because they were never a eat all crap. They were just to eat whatever, try to eat some healthy foods, and just make sure these numbers line up. So kind of what this showed, right? I mean, if you were tracking calories, which would be really interesting in this trial, so that the ultra processed people didn't overeat relative to the unprocessed people, I'd be really curious what those numbers would look like then.
Yeah, I mean, probably everything would have just stayed the same. So, anyways, that's just the. I guess the tail, the message here is, if you don't actually read the paper, the headline can be, or the title can be, totally misleading.
As can the abstract.
And I mean the headline. I keep saying it. The title of the paper itself, the published paper itself, can be misleading. Not to mention how much a journalist will butcher it in an actual non-scientific article. They'll just sensationalize it even worse. So if you don't read the paper, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like you have to go into the paper to actually get the real data.
Yeah.
And I would not leave it up to the journalist. Like if you read an article about a paper, that's still not the same as reading the paper.
No, it was like every time, not knocking our journalist friends, but every time someone would call me for an interview on ESOP Eat, the phone call would always go, okay, I haven't had time to read the book, so just give me the quick notes. And you're like, what? This is weird, right? So
it's not how it works.
No,
it's not how it works.
So, and I imagine it's very similar. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, the universities put out a press release based on the paper, and the press release is written in a way to try to entice journalists to then pick it up and spread it. So the sensationalization starts there, and then like the telephone game just keeps getting worse and worse.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, all right. So I guess beware. Reader beware when you see an article about some sensationalized sounding headline like this. That it when you dig into the paper, you find out the truth about it. And in this case, I hope we did a decent job showing you that a published in a reputable journal with a title saying ultra processed diets cause excess calorie intake and weight gain, in reality, just showed 0.8 pounds of fat gain, 1 pound of lean gain, as compared to 0.6 pounds of fat loss and 1.3 pounds of lean gain loss. So it's the devil's in the detail every single time. You got to read the paper.
Done. Yeah.
Done. All right. So for Brad Pilon, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Phi Life Podcast.